Hello, and welcome to the Brad Beldon Show, your go-to podcast for all things roofing, the latest buzz in San Antonio, local politics, and just about anything else under the sun. I am so excited about today's guest, Nick Ondo, commercial insurance and risk advisor at Acrisure. Nick, y'all are a tremendous partner for Beldon Roofing Company. I want to know if you could introduce to our audience Acrisure, because not many people have heard that name, and tell us a little bit about Acrisure and how it's positioning itself in the face of the ever-changing insurance climate.
Yeah, absolutely. Brad, thank you so much for having us. Certainly an honor to be on this show. I've seen a few posted through LinkedIn, and I'm happy to be a guest here this afternoon. Acrisure is one of the fastest growing insurance brokerages in the country. We were firm in insurance for the last 50 some odd years, 60 some odd years, and Acrisure helped um, to acquire us about 6 or 7 years ago. And they have now kind of all rolled up to become one of the largest and fastest growing insurance brokerages in the country. So I don't know if anybody on this is a football fan, but Acrisure Stadium took over Heinz Field in
Oh, I
Pittsburgh,
did.
the
I did
Steelers
not know
Stadium.
that.
They've jumped on a few other opportunities like that. So depending on where you're at in the country, maybe you're happy about that, maybe you're not so happy about that. We have some Pittsburgh guys in our office that weren't super pleased with the Heinz Field transition. But so Acrisure, we're in 21 different countries, or about 1,000 locations or so globally. We are an Intel-driven financial services uh, solution for insurance, reinsurance, cyber related security. But certainly the bread and butter is on the insurance agency side of things. We specifically in the Southeast region are definitely a construction focused group. And then certainly, as you guys are aware, we serve about 237 roofing contractors locally in Florida and nationally. That's sort of all that our team does, and how Belden Roofing and our agency, started our business relationship together.
So Rob, I don't know how far back this goes. I don't know, 25 plus years. Rob used to approach me, and I would tell Rob, we're extremely loyal, and Rob would say, when the loyalty goes away, give me a call. And we've been with Rob and his team now for, I'm guessing 13, 14, maybe 15 years now. And ironically, our second longest tenured vendor is our bonding agent. Our printer has been bought and sold 4 times. We've been with them for 78 years, the same printing company.
Holy cow.
Our bonding company we've been with for, I'm guessing, close to 60 years. Our bonding company a couple years ago was bought by Acrisure. So how about our our insurance side and our bonding side?
Wow.
Uh, and you know what? What's really cool about it, and something that nobody here, even other than the change in email, you're still the same company. We're
Yes.
still we're still doing business with people, and that's really important to us, and that's why I wanted to bring you on the show because, everybody's always looking for better partners, and I wanna introduce, the world to Acrisure and see if you can't help other people as well. So Nick, I mean, the first thing I said is this ever-changing climate. It seems like every day something is changing in the insurance world. How does Acrisure view the role of insurance in mitigating climate risks? I mean, it seems like it's just an ongoing issue over and over again, and even to the point that, the climate risk with the Key Bridge, right? I mean, look at all of those risks associated with what happened, transpired last week, and the impact it's going to have across the entire industry, all the way, because ultimately, what happens, right? It goes all the way back to the reinsurance, and that reinsurance is
Absolutely.
impacting all of us.
Absolutely. So that's a great question. I mean, a little bit about me. I worked as in a landscaping company for a little while. So all that I ever think when I see lawns is how the edges are trimmed, right? How the bushes look, things like that. I also worked in the food service industry for a long time. So I like hyper analyze, the server sections and how the silverware is laid out, things like that. That once you learn them, you can't unlearn them. And with insurance, I'm learning every time I see a catastrophe at all. I'm like, I want to know what's going to happen to the insurance world as a result of that. And there is no shortage of them. Absolutely. Just like last week with the Baltimore Bridge, that the last estimation, and this was on the conservative side, is that that would be a 4 to 5 billion with a B dollar loss. And we see it in property insurance across the country with the major catastrophes. The US actually set in 2023 world record for the most billion-dollar weather and climate disasters in 2023.
And but that's not even a weather or climate disaster. That's the
No.
thing that's so startling.
Yeah.
This is really an accident, right? It falls under that category that, oh, accidents happen. It did. The
Yeah.
accident happened. Unfortunately, there were numerous fatalities, unpreventable. But it really, all of us that are watching this are paying for this, whether you like it or not. That reinsurance is only so deep, and it's gonna have to come back to put money back into that reinsurance pool for something like this to happen again in the future.
Certainly. And I mean, the loss of life and catastrophes are horrendous. It's awful to think about. These are the kinds of situations where you say, this is what insurance is for, right? Step in when the worst that can happen does happen. But you're absolutely right that it does create a strain on the insurance carriers, who then create a strain on the reinsurance carriers. And then at the end of the year, they kind of look at their books and say, hey, we took significantly more losses here, there, wherever it might be. We need to redistribute this in terms of premium increases to be able to continue to keep our doors open, keep our folks employed, and things like that. And I think that the way that Acrisure looks at it, and what I am so grateful for with this company, is through this acquisition, they made it very clear that our agency has become profitable and successful in learning how to become not only trade partners, but we look to be like a stakeholder in whomever's enterprise that we're working with. We want to be helpful in top level decisions on risk management and advising stuff in regard to the insurance and the risk management, but also just generally in the analytics and things. And Acrisure really looked at most of the agencies that they put together in this as, the top of the line. These are the folks that day in and day out deliver the best solutions to their clients. And Acrisure said, this is successful. We don't want to break what isn't, or, we don't want to fix what isn't broken. And they've allowed us just with a little bit more horsepower on a national level with technology, with some innovations, with some modeling differences that, as a 70-person agency out of Pompano Beach, we may not have had access to the way that we do now. So Acrisure as a whole is leveraging a lot of data, a lot of artificial intelligence. They've dumped a lot of money into resources to help on the risk management and modeling side of things to try and say, here are a lot of things in the insurance industry that we cannot control, but what we can control, we're going to make sure that we deliver the best solutions to each of our clients through the agency partners that we've brought into this conglomeration of agencies across the country.
Well, and I think it's a perfect example that, private equity and these mergers, they get a bad name, but if done properly, the customer actually benefits, right? And like I said, it's your email that changed. Other than that, the level of service that we get from Acrisure or Furman, whatever you want to call it, it could be ABC. I'm still dealing with you and Rob,
Certainly.
and that's who we do business with. We do business with people, and you continue to deliver at one of the highest levels of any vendor that we have in our ecosystem, and for that we're grateful. I know we're meeting with Rob next week, and it took Rob about, I don't know, about 5 years, and Rob would go through his 200-page binder, and he would sit there and he would see that my dad and I were always losing patience. And one day Rob said, Mike, am I missing something? He said, Rob, put the damn price on the front page, and if I wanna know the details, I'll ask. And so for probably the last 10 years, Rob puts it right on the front page, and that relationship has gone really well since then, and we're probably the only customer Rob does that for, because Rob wants to build the value over time, but over that presentation. But I think what's interesting about the way y'all operate is you build value 365 days a year, not the 4 hours when we're reviewing that document on an annual basis, right? We don't need the value added proposition of that. What we want to do is to sit down with Acrisure and have you explain to us what's happening in the world. I mean, for instance, Nick, you see it in your marketplace. We see it in ours. Probably very similar. You being in Florida, us being in Texas, very similar business climates. The billboards everywhere. Um, I, Nuclear verdicts have to be changing the insurance industry. And how do you think that? I mean, you can't regulate them out. How do you think that these changes will impact all of us going forward?
That is a great question. And, I'm sure over the last 5 to 7 years, you've experienced it with Belden Roofing. The umbrella industry is what's taking the largest hit. There was a time where umbrella carriers, the capacity was such that if you wanted $5 million umbrella sitting over top of all of your underlying lines of coverage, you could get that for relatively inexpensive, comparatively speaking, to the underlying lines of coverages. If you wanted 10 million, you could do that. If you wanted 25 million, you could do that. And one carrier likely could deploy that capacity. Maybe there was a little bit of layering going on, but generally the sky was the limit. Whatever umbrella limits that you were looking for, you could receive in pretty short order. And these nuclear verdicts, Travelers just released a report earlier this year. Nuclear verdicts over the last couple of years is kind of a trending topic, of course, in the insurance industry, that word. How that was defined by Travelers was any verdict over $10 million,
Wow.
any settlement over $10
That's
million.
mind-boggling. I mean, you know what? I've never put a numeric number and thinking about I'm thinking, wow, I'm thinking $1 million, I think
Yeah.
is nuclear, and when you're saying 10,000,000, uh, I'm like, wow. I mean, it's even a bigger problem than I imagined.
So it actually, this year, they've adjusted that definition to be nuclear verdicts now are defined by $30 million and more. And Travelers literally released, I have it on my desk here, the top 100 verdicts for each year. Um, and a number of our other carriers do as well. But these numbers are staggering. They're numbers that, to me, it's just one human being. I cannot possibly imagine what that kind of dollar figure looks like, how somebody could be awarded that. And what we see the most are, these property damage claims on the auto side of things. They're $2,500 to $5,000 in property damage, physical damage to the vehicle, go for seven, $800,000 settlements like nothing. It happens multiple times a week sometimes. And then these larger jury verdicts, what occurs is there's a couple things at play. Um, but I think that what's most important is the carriers see lawyers involved. The lawyers are fine to go to court and try and settle, try and get to a jury verdict, because the settlement, it's like the sky is the limit on what number they could achieve. Settling, carriers are willing to settle significantly more than they've ever been willing to settle before, because they don't want to go to a jury verdict or in front of a court at all. And if they do end up in court, what happens is we have millennials that are in the jury pools, which I despise saying that. It's one of my least favorite things that I have to talk about. Being a millennial, I take that very personally, as
As
millennials
you
do.
should. You're
But
less than half my age.
what that means is not me, Brad, I promise, and I have Rob to back me up, but most
I have
millennials
4 millennials, so go ahead. Hit me with it.
very short attention spans. I'm sure
Yes.
that you have seen that. So it's a lot easier for a defense attorney to come in and say, my client, Mrs. Jones, poor 70-year-old woman, is hurt. Her entire quality of life is ruined. It's because of this big bad contractor. It's because of this trucking company. It's because of this conglomerate that's owned overseas. You need to make sure that she gets adequate, compensation for the pain and suffering, for the loss of income, for the loss of the quality of life. And a jury, 9 times out of 10, is going to side with that because they look at insurance money sort of like it's play money.
But don't you think though, that if we don't figure out how to solve this problem, that business will go out of business because we won't be able to buy the insurance?
There are certainly a lot of things that I think. need to change. I do think that certain states in certain, worse venues than others are working to try and limit the level of attorney involvement in things, the burden of proof that needs to be um, now met to get things into a court system. There are some things that are starting to turn around, but the way that things are moving now, you know, workers' compensation was rampant with, frivolous claims, large verdicts and things. And the country as a whole looked and really started to control that. Loss control got a lot better, safety got a lot better. Attorneys have now found auto and general liability to attack.
No, I mean, you're right though, because I'm like today is you've seen my post, today's Safety Tuesday at Belden. And the second Tuesday of every month, we meet as a team and there's more and more office team members showing up. We meet at 6 o'clock. And why do we do that? Because we want to make sure that everybody has the latest and greatest safety training that we know that exists. And over that month, we take the lessons learned, right? Did we have coaching opportunities in driving? Did we have fall protection that was observed where it wasn't safe? Did we, whatever the issue was, we want to constantly train them because at the end of the day, it's Danny's and my responsibility to make sure that every single one of the 160 team members go back home every single day safely. And that's a huge burden.
Certainly.
And so, there's a lot it keeps you up at night. But with that being said, there's some really cool coverages out there that I don't know that a lot of people know about. And I know Rob spends a lot of time, your team spends a lot of time with us on things that, at the end of the day, most businesses, they focus on workers' comp, general liability, and auto because they think those are the three biggest exposures. Really, they're not. And y'all have done a good job of protecting the assets of Belden Roofing Company by bringing in other insurance coverages that we didn't have before moved to foot and Acrisure. Can you
Certainly.
elaborate on some of those other types of coverages that people may not be aware of that are in the marketplace today that can give them peace of mind and that maybe they don't need Ambien to sleep at night?
Ambient whiskey, whatever it might be. Yeah, absolutely. With the auto, the general liability, the workers' comp, certainly umbrella coverages. There are umbrellas that are you can access to sit over top of those three lines of coverages. So those that are a little bit more risk averse want to make sure that they're transferring as much of the risk off the balance sheet as they can to protect the assets of whomever the company may be. I think that umbrellas are certainly a good place to look, like we just talked about, because of the nuclear auto verdicts, verdicts generally. Umbrella coverage, the capacity is certainly a little more fragile than it was a couple years ago. It doesn't look like that's slowing down anytime soon. Um, so all that to say, it's a little more expensive than where it was a few years. A little's probably an understatement. Um, but then we get into coverages that we call in the industry sort of ancillary coverages. So it's exactly like you said, things you don't really necessarily need to get on a job site, but things like professional liability, things like cyber liability, they're rip and tear coverage for roofing contractors that would be placed on a contractor's errors and omissions policy.
Which I
So
think if you're a roofer and you don't aren't aware of CNA's coverage, that is a really, really solid policy at a reasonable price.
absolutely. And you're absolutely right that I think that in terms of the ancillary coverages, they have just as much propensity to put a maybe an emerging contractor completely out of business. And for
Even
those that,
more so than the three main ones, right?
yeah,
Because they could happen real quickly.
very quickly, and there is no financial tool for you to transfer that off the balance sheet within the auto, the general liability, and the workers compensation coverage that most states require of you to have to be in business.
Yeah, I would strongly encourage people to reach out to you to talk about the ancillary coverages because y'all do a really good job. Your book that you bring, I don't know how many pages, 200 pages, about 180 pages of it is ancillary coverages that every year your team evaluates. You actually ask us what we're doing in business so that you can provide us the proper ancillary coverages because our needs change every year.
Absolutely.
And I think that partnering with Acrisure is really powerful in the sense that I don't need to be a resident expert in insurance. I want to be a resident expert in roofing, guttering, siding, windows, doors.
Sure.
Yeah, I want to partner with somebody that is that resident expert so that you can push back. I don't want somebody just says yes, 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 yes. I want somebody to say, Brad or Danny, have you ever considered this risk? And this is why this risk exists. And over the last year, we've seen 6 cases that have resulted in $100,000 claims or $50,000 claims. That doesn't sound like a lot of money, but when you have 2 or 3 of them, it's still real money, right?
Absolutely.
And in the margins in the roofing business, as low as they are, that can really have the propensity to hurt a company just as much as the 3 main ones. And that's why I strongly encourage somebody to partner with an entity like Acrisure who has the knowledge, who has the wherewithal, who has the staff that can look at all the ancillary coverages and provide options. You don't have to take them, but
Yeah,
at least you know that they exist. I mean, you know, there's you can't you can't do anything about weather, right? I mean, it is what it is. If you're driving and you get caught in a hailstorm, your car's damaged. If you're at home and you get caught in a hailstorm, your roof is damaged. Those things you have zero control over. But you have control over cyber to an extent, right? You can put
certainly.
in systems like the provider that you give to us. My gosh, they make our life miserable, but they're poking holes every single day, right? And they're doing their due diligence as a valued partner to Belden. Um, are they perfect? Not by any stretch of the imagination. Could somebody still come in and get in? Probably so. There probably isn't much they want now because, through y'all's recommendations, virtually everything that we do is in the cloud now, right? We don't host anything on our own premises anymore that's of value, other than the sign with your name on it when you show up here and you get greeted. But talking about weather, that continues to be, I mean, I know you're in the commercial world, but even on the residential side, that continues to be a really big problem for getting insurance now, especially in some of the well, actually, Florida and Texas, once again, 2
Yes.
states 2 states that have hail, hurricanes. Florida doesn't have hail, but you have extremely dangerous weather patterns, and they've changed significantly whether you believe in El Nino or you don't believe in El Nino. They've changed significantly over the years. How are y'all adapting your risk assessment models to account for these severe weather events? Because they're not, I mean, the golf, not golf, what we used to think dangerous hail was golf ball. Now we're talking baseball, grapefruit. They describe, they're describing the hail bigger, right? The hurricanes, they're talking about a category 6 now, right? Instead of a 5 because the storms are getting more intense. What are y'all doing at Acrisure to assess the weather patterns and preparing your clients for ensuring that they have adequate coverage?
So I think that's a great question, and I think Acrisure generally as a whole, we work with a number of property brokers that have the ability to model like a once in 100-year storm, once in 500-year storm, once in 1,000-year storm, and figure out the economic impact on our clients based on their building, based on, when the roof was last done, if there's impact windows, when the last time the electrical was done, and help everyone to understand exactly what's at risk at varying levels of storms. And that to me, so the property market, you know, a risk management strategy could potentially be avoidance, right? You don't like the hurricanes in Florida. The first thought is, well, move out of Florida then. So then you move into Texas and then you got hail and you got some hurricanes. You certainly have winter weather to contend with too. Okay, move
Oh,
out of
come on,
Texas.
it's 90 degrees here today. It's not
uh,
that cold.
you move into the Midwest and you got all kinds of hailstorms and tornadoes and things. You
Tornado
move into
Alley, yeah.
the Northeast and you have problems with snow. You move on to the West Coast and you have landslides and you have flooding and you have wildfires. So really the idea of avoiding it is each market is strained on the property side of things just for drastically different reasons.
So you
The
gotta move
actual
to Montana then to avoid all the inclement weather?
I don't know if Montana has had one of these billion-dollar events. I'll definitely get back to you, but when I find the safest state, that's where I'm moving.
So
Um,
I have to go back to this millennial comment you made because only a millennial would run a model on 1,000 years, something in 1,000 years, because you think all you millennials think you're gonna live forever, and you're not. So go ahead and run all the 1,000-year models you want, but I would stick to about an 80-year model and
we
let somebody else worry about the rest.
all the other millennials feel that they're invincible. I realize that I'm not. What's important, though, I think, is learning exactly where your risks are on the property side, working with a broker that has access to markets that can get creative in the way that they layer things, in the way that insurance carriers split capacity with one another.
Which is an interesting model that didn't used to happen.
It didn't
That
have to. You're
right,
absolutely
it just
right.
started happening over the last 3 or 4 renewals, we've seen that.
And that's exactly what happened on the liability umbrella side of things is the
That's where we
capacity
saw
got.
it, was on the
Yeah,
umbrella, yeah. Instead of 1 carrier picking up the whole umbrella, we had 3 carriers, right, picking up layering
little
the
pieces.
risk, yeah.
And that's what's happening on the property insurance side. For some of the larger total insured value, property schedules, think like auto dealerships, think school districts, things like that, where they're monstrous buildings that they can't really do anything to get rid of them. Um, there's got to be ways to layer this property tower to make sure that, you know, we talk about a 1 in 50-year storm, we talk about a 1 in 100-year storm. These things have very low probability of occurring, but that's all that carriers are concerned about.
But when they do occur, it's a
Exactly.
problem. Yeah, yeah.
And so certainly, the 3 things that we pledge to each and every one of the folks that we work with is that we're gonna protect the balance sheet, we're gonna control the insurance costs, and we're gonna create an ease of business for each and every one that we work with.
Oh my
Protect
gosh. You're a mini Rob.
Thank you. You gotta text him and tell him that.
Oh my
I have
gosh.
heard that
He's
since I
been
started here.
he's been preaching that for 50, well, probably 20 years, yeah.
But the way that we look at it is you need to understand what's generating that balance sheet to
Right,
understand
exactly.
exactly what risks are involved in the business day in and day out, some of the things that maybe folks aren't thinking about. And when we say control insurance costs, certainly everyone's concerned about the premiums going down, going down, going down. How do I reduce my costs? And we understand that 100%. But there are certainly times that insurance, the way that it works is, you buy a 2012 Toyota Camry with 200,000 miles, you know what you're getting, right? And if you splurge and get a newer car, you know what you're getting there. With insurance coverage, it's a piece of paper. And if you're not familiar with what those words say on that policy, the only time that you're realizing if you're covered or not is when there's an issue, right? And that's what I think we strive to try and explain to anyone that we work with and even people that we sit down and evaluate. We're happy to work on a no cost consultation type of a situation to say, hey, look, here's your insurance program. Here's the things that we think could be improved. Here's some things to consider. There's never going to be a time that we're pushy on any one specific insurance coverage because we just don't operate that way. But in order to protect the balance sheet, we have to understand exactly what's going on with each individual business and can kind of cater the insurance program to each individual business.
Well, one of the best things that I learned from Rob, and actually my brother-in-law as well, was, a named peril policy, right? That Ri used to tell Rob, "I would just like for somebody just to tell me what's covered." And, like, they have policies that tell you what's not covered and everything else is covered. I'm like, "Okay, that I can deal with, because
Yes,
then I can understand." So it's like what you said, if you don't understand the paper that's written on, you gotta ask questions.
certainly.
So, like, you're moving to Montana because clearly that's the only state out of the 50 that doesn't have weather patterns. What are your favorite things to do in your free time? Because I mean, like, there's only 3 million people in that whole state, right?
Yes.
And, like, you could probably drive for an hour and not see anybody in Montana. So what are you gonna do when you move to Montana? What's your favorite thing to do in your free time?
So, in my free time, in Montana or otherwise, there's a couple things that I really enjoy. The first one is golf. which I'm horrendous at. So I
So is
play
Rob.
every weekend and I do exactly what I did the week before. I get angry at the exact same out of bounds drive, the blown putt, so on and so forth. I'll never put a moment into practicing or getting a coach or anything that I'm supposed to be doing if I want to improve upon it. And week in and week out, I do the same things over and over, expecting a different result, like Albert Einstein calls insanity, right? Another thing,
Amazon can fix that problem for you because if you just type in golf, tools or golf training tools, there'll be like 500 pages of them.
that's great. I will definitely look into that after we're concluding here.
What's
I
your
also
gen index?
the handicap,
Yeah.
I'm at like a 13 or a 14,
Oh,
which
that's not a
I
bad golfer.
I think that that's ridiculous. I think that it's way, way over projected because I shoot regularly in the 90s and can get wild into the hundreds. It just depends on the day. I do genuinely enjoy golf, and I think what I like the most about it is Rob doesn't like it so much, so it's
He's
one place.
horrible. You can
I
tell him
love
I
that.
said that.
Yes, I will, absolutely. Um, but I also like to read, which is funny because anyone that knows me knows that I can't really focus on anything for too long. But reading seems to kind of calm me down in that way. And I also really enjoy yoga to kind of clear my mind and things, which I'm a big boy. I mean, we've
You
met.
millennials are very different. I
I'm a
don't
wide
read.
body
I
guy,
don't do yoga.
and
I
certainly
play
listen.
golf.
Yes, I will never forget the flags all over your office. It's very
Yeah.
impressive. And
Yeah.
you had sent a box of Pro Vs down here, and I wanted to email you and say I think I lost them within 2 weeks of receiving them. So thank you so much. That was a very generous gift, and I'm sorry that I ruined that pretty quickly.
Well, as long as they were logoed and somebody finds them, then it's business because
Yeah, there it is.
we're licensed in Florida as well, and we're licensed and registered in 45 states, so you can go play golf anywhere you want except in Alaska, Hawaii, Illinois, California, and Rhode Island. Other than that, I don't care where you play.
Just lose
Um,
them everywhere.
yeah, lose them everywhere. So, Nick, um, sustainability is a big issue too, and especially with the millennials. How does Acrisure engage with policyholders like Belden to promote sustainability and reduce risks associated with once again climate change? Whether what are y'all doing there?
So it's funny, the irony is that you're talking about the 200-page book that we bring to the
Right.
meeting,
I
which
asked Rob, "Do you ever heard of a PDF?" And he just looks at me. I'm like, "You could just pull it up on the screen."
so I really we are a paperless agency, and we
Except for
have
Rob.
been for about 10 years, I wanna say, which, the insurance world is a lot of paperwork. There just is. There's a lot of paperwork no matter how you look at it. I think that Acrisure as a whole is working to bring a lot of things online. Um, like most other companies, leveraging the technology that's available to us to make sure that people have access to things that maybe they don't need to print 15 pages to find the 3 sentences that are relevant, those kinds of things. Um, I think Acrisure as a whole has spent a great deal of time on the technology side of our business. I think that it's one of the things that separate us from some of the other agency conglomerations in the country is that the technology that we have behind us to help with modeling, to help with analytics, to help connect interagency communications. So if I end up in front of a contractor that I've never worked with before, that industry class, we have access to other people that are experts that are all over the Acrisure family. And those folks can come get involved in these contractors or just insureds generally to deliver the best solutions quickly. Because certainly, the more time spent on any one thing, the wheel spinning, energy is being used, whether that's actual physical paper, that's time on the phone, whatever the case is, these resources are absolutely precious to each and every one of us, most importantly, time. And if we can help save some time by not having to go bounce back and forth and ask questions that we don't really know that we need the answers to, connect our clients with the people that can get them effective solutions quickly. I think that Acrisure has done its job in that regard.
Well, I can tell you based on your comment on time and when you graduated, you're a year older than our oldest, so I would tell you I am double your age, and I would tell you that time is the one thing I wish I could get back. So,
Certainly,
if you can figure out that proper work-life balance and to have that time, time is the one thing you can't bring back, right? Integrity is the one
certainly.
thing that you can control, but time is the one thing you can't get back. But speaking of your college experience, John Oates, rock and roll duo, Hall& and Oates, I mean, everybody's dying to get into Texas, right? I mean, it's the number 1 university in the SEC and I mean, like, I don't know, 1,000,000 people apply every year. I don't know. I just have to ask, is John Oates why you went to Temple?
That is a great question, and it's the first time I've ever been asked it, so that's very creative of you. I am a big Hall& and Oates fan, but what drove me to Temple was actually I was born and raised outside of Philadelphia, and when my friends, the older crowd that I played sports with and things started to go to colleges, and we started to go visit people, both my mom and my dad have been separated for as long as I can remember. Both of them were completely in agreement that the one school that I was never allowed to visit was Temple University. They didn't care if I went to Penn State, they didn't care if I went to other states. Temple University, because it's in North Philadelphia, was a hard no. So, naturally,
I mean,
when
how
I
did you leave your dorm room safely, right? I mean,
it
it's a rough area.
yes, it is in beautiful sunny North Philadelphia. For those of you that are going to be listening in here,
Beautiful campus.
North Philadelphia is not beautiful or sunny really any time of the year. Um, But I was actually, fun fact, the only kid in my 15-person house, my junior and senior year that wasn't robbed at one point or another walking through campus.
Oh,
It was class.
this is not gonna help the admissions at Temple University.
It I
Fortunately, we don't have a very large following, so you only have to worry about 1,000 or 2,000 people seeing this, but but just goes to show we'll tag it with Temple University, and there'll be 1,000,000 people who go viral, and they'll say, "Some roofer in San Antonio says don't go to Temple."
Temple is an incredible school. I would not take back any part of my experience there, and actually, I went to school for risk management and insurance. Their program there is one of the best in the country, um, and I owe most of what I've learned in the insurance world to that group of people.
That and Rob, right?
That and certainly Rob. Certainly Rob.
So look, now that you're 12 years old and you're looking at the future and you've got this incredible education from that fine university in Philly, where do you see the insurance landscape changing in the next 10 to 20 years? Because it seems like every 5 years or so, we're going through just a vicious cycle. And then
Yeah.
it stabilizes and then boom, it happens again. And maybe the key bridge is that incident that happened that's going to change that'll be the next 5 year cycle. What are you seeing for the next 10 to 20 years?
So I think that you're absolutely right. I think that a lot of each individual insurance segment has experienced growing pains, and it seems like it happens in a couple year cycles. So I think that generally most markets have been really hardened lately. Um, the financial impact of the nuclear verdicts, of the type of billion-dollar Mother Nature's losses that have been delivered over and over and over again. Insert issue here. The insurance industry has to bear that at some point financially and figure out
Somewhere down the chain, somebody's got to pay for it.
exactly. Um, and they have to figure out how to stay in business. They have to figure out how to cover their folks adequately. They have to figure out how to continue to be in business, to make money, and to also protect folks adequately. I think in the next 10 to 20 years, we're going to see, on the auto side specifically, I don't see a world where cameras aren't absolutely a requirement for commercial contractor or otherwise anybody that
Or
drives.
or even like seatbelts, right? I mean, it might just be mandated by law down the road that you got to have a forward facing camera, right?
Certainly.
For blame, right? It's not a he said, she said. Here's the video evidence of what actually happened, and this is who's
Yes.
responsible.
I think that that's absolutely something we're going to see in the very near future. I think, just like in history, criminals have to get smarter to get around law enforcement, and there's always this back and forth. The insurance industry works very similarly in the sense that every time there's new issues that rise, the insurance industry has to step up and figure out how to adequately underwrite that risk, how to price to make sure that they can protect those risks. And time again, there's these growing pains. And over the next 10, 20 years, I see captive insurance programs. I see alternative risk funding becoming a much, much more prevalent part of the
I
insurance segment.
agree with you 100%. I mean, the captive market is really, in essence, that it came of this, right? And I think it'll only get more perfected. It'll perfect the program the more people start to look at a captive. But I got to tell you, this is probably my 15th podcast, so I'm new at this. You're the first person that's brought up criminals in my podcast history. But, I'm just thinking he's from Philly, went to Temple. He was only the only guy in his whole class that didn't get mugged. There's something there that I'm missing. And, maybe we talked about the Ambien earlier. Maybe you might benefit from getting a good night's sleep. Uh, you do live in West Palm, for Pete's sakes. Everybody there is 80 years old, right? I mean, what kind of crime could you possibly have there? Um,
There's down here is much better than North Philly, I gotta say.
and half the year nobody's there.
That's
They all go back to Philly, New York.
That's actively changing, and speaking of golf, this time of year, the golf courses are crazy, and everyone looks forward to when prices go back down, tee times are more available, but we're really not seeing the drop off the way that it used to be. There's, like, something like 100,000 families a year are moving into Florida permanently, and,
So, I saw an economist speak last week. I don't remember the term that they used, but they were talking about the natural migration from, not immigration from another country, but across state lines. And what he talked about was Texas and Florida, number one and two, not necessarily in that order. I don't remember which order it was,
right,
but the population is growing faster than the state can keep up with it, and that in itself presents some challenges. Whether you're in the insurance, whether you're in infrastructure, schools, right? I mean, I don't know how the schools are going to handle this. Um, it's going to present some serious challenges because you want to move from California, sell your house, move, right?
yeah,
You don't put the state on notice that says, "I'm moving there and I'm bringing 4 other people with me, and I need these services starting Friday,"
right,
right? I want trash pickup, I want phone service, I want
yeah,
internet, right? It's really a challenge, and it's really, and it's changing the insurance market. I heard recently in Texas and in Florida that if the roof was over 10 years old, that and you went to buy insurance on a home you're moving, it's very difficult in Texas and Florida to get insurance on a roof that's, one day past 10 years old.
yep,
Those are different issues that people are dealing with because of insurance, right? I mean, you have to have the insurance. You can't get a mortgage without it. And partnering with companies like Acrisure, whether it's your business insurance or whatever need, I think it's important for our audience to understand the value of partnering with somebody who understands and can navigate, you to the future, whatever that risk is.
absolutely.
So, you've been working with Rob for quite some time. You come out of Philly, so you're a tough guy. What was well, first off, you're a tough guy who can't play golf. So, what was Rob's first impression of you? Was it Caddyshack? I mean, what was that impression? I mean, were you you have the radio blaring and you hit your drive out of bounds, or what was that first impression?
So I was actually working with another office down here with it. I mean, you know Rob well over the years that you've worked with him. He literally might be the most professional person that I've ever met in my entire life. And that doesn't really change whether you're traveling with him, whether you're in the office with him, whether you're in the car with him. That is just Rob's personality. And I am not exactly like that. So I walked into Furman at the time in a golf shirt that was untucked, um, and I walked up to the desk, and I have headphones in, and I was sneaking out to smoke a jewel out back. And the first impression, I'm pretty sure Rob thought that I wasn't going to last a month at this agency. And yeah, so had some stiff conversation, but I was a young pup. I mean, I was 23. I didn't know my butt from my hand. And um, Rob has really
This
helped.
might explain some of the advice I've been given over the years.
Really helped my professional development, we'll call it. But we
Oh my
still laugh
gosh.
about it sometimes that he's like, "It's crazy to think that I didn't see you making it 6 months with our company at the time."
Well, you know what? Rob's a great mentor. He's a great leader. But above all, he's a great person. And to be able to work with Rob is just got to, in your industry, has got to be, there's thousands of people that want that opportunity and you capitalized on it. And I'm assuming that while you were at Temple, you did that internship with the Safeguard Group. Is that why you chose the insurance industry? And do you think that helped you get the job with Rob?
I so I really chose the insurance industry because I saw a lot of opportunity, at Temple, being that their risk management insurance program is so strong. I joke that it's probably by default that there's not a whole lot of business schools that offer an insurance specific degree program. So Temple has to be great because it's one of 10 that offer. But truly they do a great job of helping you to find jobs, find internships, things like that. That's where Safeguard came from. And everything that I heard about the insurance industry, it's not the most flashy of industries, right? It's
Not a
not
very glamorous industry, is it?
exactly. I had a guy that I was speaking with in one of those no cost consultation conversations, and he was like, I got to be honest, insurance agents aren't like the Easter Bunny. Like nobody's really happy to talk to their insurance guy. And
Or their funeral director, right? Either one.
yes, exactly. So, we certainly understand that, but I think, coming from realizing that there was a huge talent gap in the industry because it's not the most glamorous, starting with Safeguard and kind of cutting my teeth in the industry and seeing the possibilities that were available. Then when I moved to Florida and linked into Rob's team, I mean, like you just said, one of the best people that I know and one of the hardest working individuals, honorable human beings that I've ever met. And being able to really learn how to properly and adequately and with integrity serve the folks that we work with um, has paid off in ways that I couldn't even have dreamed of.
I don't even know
So,
how Dora puts up with him, to be honest with you, but
I really that time that you
she
sent the
needs a
box
medal.
with the hazmat suit and the belt and cuffs because of that exercise incident back in the COVID days. I will never
I
forget
told
that.
him, "What are you doing going to a workout facility?" He blamed her, but I don't know. Hey, look, you talked about Florida, you got the deal with Rob, but rumor in the industry is that your timing, you moved there in 2016. Uh, You can either confirm or deny, but is it true that you actually house sat at Mar-a-Lago while Trump was president? You did that for 4 years and you didn't pay rent?
I'm gonna have to deny. I'm gonna have to deny. I've maybe even plead the fifth here. I have
You
passed that house many, many times, though. I gotta say it's spectacular up there. I
I have been on that roof. Mr. Trump hired
really.
Mr. Trump hired me about 20 years ago. I don't remember which hurricane, maybe it was Charlie. I don't know. It's so many hurricanes there that I forget all the names. And I represented him on a claim and helped him work with the insurance company to settle his claim. So he
Wow,
didn't invite me to the White House for his inauguration, but I did what I was,
that's not right.
asked to do. Um, so, as we wind down, Nick, ask you a couple more questions. How does Acrisure and the Rob Foote team that he's assembled continue to lead the market in attracting tier one contractors to its customer base? You said y'all have over 240, I think you said. That's just mind-boggling. You are
37.
the leader. You're the leader in every tier one contractor. When they're looking for a relationship in this industry, they call your team. Why is that?
That's a great question. I think that great leadership begets a strong team around him, certainly. And I think that really it goes back to those three core values. What's most important to us is that each and every contractor that we work with feels like we will be available to them in whatever capacity that needs to be, so that they feel adequately serviced. Certainly, like taking the commodity of placing the insurance program off of the table. What's important to us is that we serve folks, that we advise folks of new risks, that we stay on top of each and every insurance market that we work with, and that we help each and every one of our clients, advise them for the best possible solutions with insurance that will ultimately help them to create and take control of their insurance destiny. I mean, most contractors have, the insurance costs are probably number 3 or 4 on the P&L. It's not an inexpensive line item. And when you consider that, making sure that you have progressive disciplinary program in place on the auto, or making sure that each harness is checked on every 3 days or whatever the case might be, there's little things that can be implemented on a day-to-day basis that can really actually shape what your insurance premiums look like over time. Not saying it's going to happen overnight, and I'm not saying that you can completely engineer the severity risk out of the construction world, completely off of your balance sheet. But there are things that you can do that over time, with the time tested, proven track record that we have with risk management, with the loss control resources that are available, and implementing them similar to the way that Belden Roofing does from the top down.
Hey, I was at the safety meeting this morning. I'm there.
Yes.
I'm there every month. Safety Tuesday. Nick, um, there's so much to unpack in the insurance world. I can't thank you enough for your insights in today's challenges in the insurance market, whether it's residential or commercial. Thank you so much, for your time. I really, this time just flew. I could probably ask you another hour of questions. For our audience, thank you for tuning in today. What a great day of learning about the ever changing insurance market. And as my friend Judd Ashmore used to say, hug somebody. It'll make you feel better.